Good morning. I'm just going to analyse a game played by Henry Bird, the originator of the Birds opening. He was a very exciting and unusual player, and he liked to play adventurous and attacking moves. He didn't always do well by it, but he does have a couple of fantastic a few fantastic wins in his career. He beat Lasker, he beat Steinitz, but this is probably my favourite. He often done really well against the best players in casual games because they weren't prepared for his crazy ideas. Uh, this isn't such a crazy idea, but it does have a beautiful, beautiful sequence in it. His opponent was called George MacDonald. Not the MacDonald who played the famous match against Labourdonnais, but he was a distant relative. And after the game, Bard is said to have said, "Yeah, McDonald's been it's 70 years after the game with Labourdonnais or so. He says McDonald's been a much better player since his match with Labourdonnais, which is a different McDonald, and McDonald played this game. Says, yeah, McDonald's been living on my reputation ever since he died. So." But he's probably a better player than the first McDonald. Anyway, that's just a little joke they had amongst themselves. So, e4, e5, King's Gambit, as usual. He accepts it, and he plays knight to f3, the usual. And then he plays g5 to defend the pawn. It's attacked by the h-pawn, and he plays g4 to attack the knight. The knight comes to f6. This e5. This is called the Kieseritsky Gambit, after our friend Lionel Kieseritsky. And Bird plays h5. This is called the long whip defense for two reasons, because they think that this pawn structure looks somewhat like a long whip, but also because it takes a long time to play out to get some advantage for black if he plays everything correctly. So, the long whip defense used to be a favourite of mine when I accepted the King's Gambit. I no longer accept the King's Gambit. Realised it's foolish. Okay, so bishop comes to c4 to attack the f-pawn. There's only one defence, the knight comes to h6. And the pawn on f5, f4 makes it safe from attacks by the bishop until something can be done about supporting the f-pawn. So, pawn is moved so that the bishop can take the pawn, can take the knight, and then get this check in here. But he chases away the knight with d6. And so, okay, the pawn might be 1-0, but he isn't going to get the attack on the f-pawn. So he plays f3. He's willing to give up the pawn on his terms. I don't understand why he plays g3. Why let him have a pass pawn just 2 squares from queening? He's going to regret that. Yeah, of course. Why not just attack the centre another time? Of course, it's just, And yeah, again, I don't understand why he's doing it like this. He could have played d5 there and forked the bishop and knight, but then knight comes here, check, and the queen has to take, and then the pawn falls. So, not the best. The king moves partly to defend the pawn on g3, and partly to allow the rook or queen to come to e1, threatening the king. So the bishop blocks that threat, and now the knight comes and is maybe threatening to come to g6, forking the rook and bishop. So the rook comes to h7, where it won't be forked, and where it also defends the bishop on e7. Bishop is attacked anyway, and now he plays the fork. So he takes the pawn. He takes the knight. He could have taken the pawn, but just look at these passed pawns he has in this position. Of course he does that. The knight comes to d5, possibly to lend a bit more support to the e3 square, which can be dangerous if black gets a pawn to e3. So he threatens the knight. If he moves, if he moves the knight to e3 now, he'll take the bishop. So the queen's attacked, and Bird, yeah, take my queen, because he knows he's getting 2 pieces and a very good check and 2 passed pawns on the 6th rank for that queen. Of course, it's worth it. So he takes the bishop. The queen's taken. He plays bishop pawn to e3 check, so he's got 2 passed pawns, and now he gets another bishop for it. And black's in a position where he has to rescue his bishop immediately. And he does that, and then f2 is check, and then e1 threatens the queen, and then a beautiful and amusing little sequence collects both knights for black. Obviously, if he plays pawn to f1 and gets a queen, white's going to have to take that queen, and he can take the rook and get a new queen, and black's going to have to take that, and then he takes with the bishop. But he doesn't do that. He gets a knight and forks and says check, and he has to, if he doesn't take the knight, then he takes the queen. So he has to take the queen, and he does the same again, gets another knight, and he has to take the knight because he's forking the queen. So he takes that with the bishop, and now you can see that bishop and queen are playing against 2 rooks, 2 knights, and a bishop. So he's got 2 rooks, 2 knights for a queen and pawn. Of course he's winning easily here. The reason, you might think he could move the king, and he could, but if he moves the king, as soon as the queen takes the bishop, the knight is threatened as well, and then, So actually, moving the knight makes more sense because it moves also the attack before it happens. Attacks the queen, rather than defending the pawn, attacks the queen again. Look at this square, f3, nasty little check coming there. Lovely, and then he gets another check on the king, and now he can take the bishop with check, and now he's got 2 rooks, 2 knights for a queen and pawn. So let's check. Check again. Takes the pawn, allowing bishop here, check. So white makes an escape square for his king on a7, a2 even. So he plays the check here. And now a knight sacrifice. If he takes the queen, of course, Bird just takes the queen, and then he's a whole rook and pawn, and a whole rook and knight up, and they've got the same number of pawns. Of course, it's an easy win. So he takes the knight. And now e7, the quiet killer. Yeah, black does have a couple of checks, but literally just a couple of checks. He can check here with the queen, the king comes to f7, and he can then check here with the queen, and the king comes to g7. He could then check with the queen on g4, but then he loses the queen. Otherwise, next move, black's got rook to f1, e1 check, because the queen sacrifice has opened up the second rank. The knight sacrifice has opened up the second rank. So yeah, McDonald resigned there. A beautifully imaginative game, and a witty little double under promotion to knights that didn't actually make any difference. It would have been the same result had he under promoted to queens. But he wanted to show that he that he could do it. It was just a very imaginative player, and he loved to play f4. He loved to play f4. That's why Bird's opening f4. But he didn't have particularly good success with that. It's probably a bit more successful nowadays than it was in his day. Nowadays, people have learned better how to play with it, as well as learning better how to play against it. But yeah, I'm not recommending Bird's opening 1f4 to anybody. But yeah, Henry Bird, originator of the opening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share and comment to this video. Thanks. Bye.